You're breathing right now. You've been doing it since the moment you were born. You've done it roughly 20,000 times today, alone. You've never had to think about it, never had to practice it, never had to be taught, and almost every single breath has been wrong. Not wrong in the way that sends you to a hospital, wrong in the slow, invisible way that reshapes your face, fractures your sleep, sharpens your anxiety, and quietly shortens your life. All while you sit here absolutely convinced you already know how to breathe. You don't. And the story of how that happened is stranger than you'd expect. Your body was built by 3.5 billion years of evolution. That's a number so large it barely fits inside the human mind. But the important part is this. Almost every system in your body, your heart, your gut, your immune response, was refined across millions of generations until it worked with remarkable precision. Breathing was no exception. Your ancestors, not your grandparents, not your great-grandparents, but the ancient hominins who walked the African savanna hundreds of thousands of years ago, breathed through their noses. Only their noses. Exclusively. And they did so even under extreme physical exertion, even while running for miles, even while hunting prey across open terrain in relentless heat. Your mouth was not designed to be an airway, not originally. The mouth was designed for eating, for speaking, for biting. The nose was designed for breathing. And the difference between those two pathways, it turns out, is not cosmetic. It is physiological, chemical, structural, and deeply ancient. So what happened? The shift began with something you eat every day. Around 10,000 years ago, humans started farming. Before that, your ancestors ate wild game, tubers, nuts, seeds, and raw, fibrous plants. Their jaws worked constantly, not just chewing, but tearing, grinding, and pulling against hard, resistant food. That constant mechanical stress told the bones of the face to grow wide, grow strong, and grow open. Dental records from pre-agricultural skulls show virtually no crowding. Teeth grew in straight, jaws were broad and well-developed, airways were unobstructed. Then came soft food. Grains were cooked and ground into paste. Bread replaced roots. Porridge replaced raw meat. The jaw had less work to do. And when bones stopped being consistently stressed, they stopped growing to meet the demand. They shrink. They narrow. Over generations, they crowd. Researcher Dr. Daniel Lieberman at Harvard has studied this skeletal shift in extraordinary detail, documenting how the modern human face has become structurally compressed compared to our ancestors. Narrower palates, smaller jaws, more crowded teeth, and critically, smaller airways. The modern human nose was meant to sit above a wide jaw with a broad nasal passage behind it. That architecture was gradually eroded across thousands of years of agricultural life. Lieberman calls it a mismatch disease, a body built for one world forced to function in another. And when the airway narrowed, something instinctive kicked in. You opened your mouth. Mouth breathing feels natural. It feels like you're getting more air. Your chest rises higher. Your breaths come faster. Everything in your body tells you that more airflow means more oxygen, and more oxygen means better performance and a clearer head. Your body is lying to you. This is one of the most counterintuitive facts in all of human physiology, and it was first described with precision by the Danish physiologist Christian Bohr in 1904. What Bohr discovered, now called the Bohr effect, is that oxygen doesn't release from your red blood cells simply because you breathe it in. It releases when your blood contains enough carbon dioxide. Read that again. Carbon dioxide. The waste gas you've been told your whole life to exhale as quickly as possible is actually the biochemical trigger that tells your hemoglobin to let go of oxygen and deliver it to your muscles, your organs, and your brain. When you breathe fast and open through your mouth, you exhale too much CO2. Your blood, CO2 drops. And even though your lungs are full of oxygen, your hemoglobin holds onto it. It doesn't release. Your cells can begin to starve for oxygen even as your blood is saturated with it. This is exactly why hyperventilation makes you dizzy. This is exactly why anxiety makes everything worse. Shallow, fast breathing during a panic attack dumps CO2, which tightens blood vessels, which reduces blood flow to the brain, which makes you feel like you are dying, which makes you breathe even faster. The loop feeds itself until someone tells you to breathe into a paper bag. The bag traps the CO2 you exhaled. Your blood chemistry rebalances. The panic subsides. You were never short of oxygen. You were short of the trigger that delivers it. Physiologist and researcher Konstantin Buteyko spent decades cataloguing what he called the hidden epidemic of dysfunctional breathing, linking chronic mouth breathing and overbreathing to asthma, hypertension, anxiety disorders, and disrupted sleep. He found that the typical adult breathes around 15 times per minute and moves roughly 12 litres of air. The biochemically optimal rate, based on CO2 balance and oxygen delivery efficiency, is closer to 6 breaths per minute and 5 litres of air. 6. Half of what you're doing right now. Now consider what happens when you sleep. Your muscles relax completely. Your jaw hangs open. If the architecture of your airway is already compromised, already narrowed by years of soft food and an underdeveloped jaw, that relaxation allows the soft tissue of the throat to collapse inward. It vibrates against itself. You snore. In more severe cases, the airway closes entirely. You stop breathing. Your brain, detecting falling oxygen, shocks itself awake with a burst of adrenaline. You gasp. You fall back asleep. You remember none of it. This cycle can repeat dozens of times an hour, sometimes hundreds of times across a single night. You call it sleep apnea. You treat it as a medical condition that appeared in your life. But it is not random. It is the logical endpoint of a cascade that began the moment your species stopped tearing at raw meat and started eating bread. Sleep researcher Matthew Walker has traced the sharp rise in sleep-disordered breathing directly to structural changes in the modern face. The same changes Lieberman's skeletal research identified from the opposite direction. One researcher is looking at skulls. The other is measuring brain waves in sleeping patients. They are describing the same architectural failure from two different vantage points. Your face was reshaped by agriculture. Your airway was compromised. And every single night, your sleeping body pays the interest on that ancient debt. But the story has an even older chapter. Long before Buteyko, long before Christian Bohr, long before modern physiology had instruments precise enough to measure a single exhaled molecule. Ancient practitioners in India were already obsessed with breath, not as a metaphor, not as a spiritual concept to be discussed in poetry, as a precise, technical, repeatable practice with measurable effects on the living body. Pranayama, the Sanskrit word, translates roughly as extension of the life force or mastery of breath, was a formalized system of nasal breathing techniques, controlled breath holds, and precise exhalation ratios developed and refined over thousands of years. Texts from the first millennium BCE describe alternate nostril breathing, extended exhalation techniques, and breath retention practices that modern sports physiology and neuroscience are only now beginning to investigate seriously in controlled trials. They didn't know about hemoglobin. They didn't know about CO2 tolerance. They didn't know about the Bohr effect or nitric oxide or parasympathetic activation. But they knew that when you deliberately slowed your breath, something fundamental shifted. Your nervous system quieted. Your attention sharpened. Your fear dissolved. Your body felt, in a word that hard science is only slowly becoming comfortable with, more alive. What they systematically documented across centuries, physiology has now confirmed through measurement. Your nose, when used correctly, does something your mouth is structurally incapable of doing. It filters the air. It warms it to body temperature before it reaches your lungs. It humidifies it so your airways don't dry out. Fine hairs and layers of mucous membrane trap bacteria, pollen, dust particles, and pathogens before they travel deeper. But beyond filtration, your nasal passage does something almost architectural. It reshapes incoming airflow into a slow, spiraling turbulence that carries air deep into the lower lobes of the lung, where the density of capillaries is highest, and where the most efficient blood-oxygen exchange actually takes place. Mouth breathing sends air rushing directly inward in a straight line. It reaches the upper lobes first. The upper lobes have the lowest concentration of blood exchange surfaces. You are filling the least efficient room in the house first. Your nose also produces nitric oxide. This is not a small biochemical footnote. Nitric oxide is a potent vasodilator. It opens blood vessels. It improves the uptake of oxygen at the cellular level. It carries antifungal, antiviral and antibacterial properties that serve as a first line of immune defense. When you breathe through your mouth, you produce none of it. James Nestor, a science journalist who spent years immersed in the biology and history of breath, participated in a now well-known Stanford University experiment in which he and a colleague had their nostrils surgically plugged and sealed for 10 full days, forcing exclusive mouth breathing. The consequences were documented in real time. Blood pressure rose significantly within the first few days. Snoring began the first night in a subject who previously did not snore at all. Sleep quality deteriorated measurably. Markers of systemic inflammation in the blood climbed. Cognitive performance declined. Both subjects reported persistent fatigue, brain fog, and elevated anxiety. When the plugs were removed and nasal breathing resumed, every single marker reversed within days. The experiment didn't need a decade to demonstrate what nasal breathing does for you. It needed 10 days to show what losing it costs. So what does dysfunctional breathing actually feel like from the inside? You might not know. That is precisely the problem. Chronic mouth breathers don't experience sudden dramatic collapse. They experience a slow erosion. They feel slightly more tired than they should, given how much they sleep. Slightly more anxious than the situation seems to call for. Slightly less focused than they remember being. Their athletic output plateaus at a ceiling they can't identify. Their dentist notices teeth beginning to crowd. Their doctor mentions mildly elevated blood pressure. They get headaches in the afternoon. They wake up with a dry mouth. None of these symptoms point, obviously, to how they breathe. None of their doctors ask about it. The root cause goes completely unaddressed, sometimes for decades. Meanwhile, in children who grow up breathing through open mouths, the jaw continues to narrow year by year because the tongue, when the lips are sealed and breathing happens correctly through the nose, presses naturally against the upper palate and functions as a biological expander. It shapes the growing bone from the inside. It is one of the oldest orthodontic forces on Earth. When the mouth hangs open and the tongue rests on the floor of the mouth instead, that formative pressure disappears entirely. The palate narrows. The airway tightens. The child grows into an adult with a structurally compromised face. And the problem compounds across the next generation and the one after that. Your face knows exactly how you breathe. It always has. It was built by it. The correction is not a product, it is not a procedure or a supplement or a device, though devices do exist. It is a behavior, and it is almost embarrassingly simple. Close your mouth, breathe through your nose at rest, during light exercise, during sleep, which is why a growing number of researchers, athletes, and sleep specialists have begun taping their lips shut at night with a small strip of medical tape. That practice sounds absurd until you read the research and find that for chronic mouth breathers, it can eliminate snoring in a single night, improve overnight oxygen saturation, reduce morning fatigue, and produce lasting improvements in mood and energy within days. Slow your breath down. Research from the HeartMath Institute and from cardiac physiologist Dr. Jose de Assis found consistent evidence that breathing at approximately 5 to 6 cycles per minute, what is now called resonance frequency breathing, activates the parasympathetic nervous system, significantly lowers cortisol, improves heart rate variability, and produces a deep state of physiological calm without sedation, without medication, without any external substance at all. Your nervous system uses your breathing pattern as a real-time environmental report. Fast, shallow, open-mouth breathing tells every system in your body there is a threat. Danger is present. Stay vigilant. Slow, deep, nasal breathing tells every system the opposite. The environment is safe. Stand down. recover, you can send that signal deliberately. You can consciously slow your breath to 6 cycles per minute, and your nervous system will respond as if the world has become safe, regardless of what is actually happening around you. You can lie to your own stress response. And for once in the history of the human body, that deception is entirely in your favor. Think about the last time you felt genuinely, completely calm. Not medicated, not exhausted, actually calm. There's a good chance your breathing was slow, a good chance it was quiet, a good chance your mouth was closed. You weren't thinking about breathing at all. And in those moments with no conscious effort, your body was finally doing what it was designed to do. The ancient practitioners who built entire lifetimes around breath control did not invent nasal breathing. They did not discover it. They rediscovered something the human body had already known for millions of years and was quietly forgetting. They paid close enough attention to the living body to notice what evolutionary pressure had spent billions of years refining. And they built practices and traditions and entire schools of thought around the simple act of not forgetting it. You are breathing right now. You've done it roughly 20,000 times today alone. And for most of those breaths, you are doing what your narrowed modern jaw enables, what your soft diet shaped, what your anxious, overstimulated nervous system silently reinforced, breath after breath after breath. But here is what the very first breath you ever drew as a newborn infant had in common with every human who walked this earth before agriculture existed, before cities existed, before everything that makes modern life modern. It came in through the nose. Your body has always known the way. The only question is whether you will finally let it. That's it for today. Drop a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll catch you next time.